What's going on, everybody? It's the first episode of the Thunderdome Puckcast. It's your host, Moose. We're going solo for episode number 1. Michael joined me every once in a while for this one, but since the Lightning are kind of my passion, this will be kind of my little solo project on the side. So, as always, let's hit that intro. Right, nice intro for the podcast. Welcome to the Thunderdome Puckcast. Again, I'm your host, Moose. You can tweet at me at $10 Sports. You see all that information below. We are really excited to get this show off for the general public of our channel on YouTube. So you'll find these organized under Thunderdome Puckcast. You do these probably every week or two. I know preseason just started for the Lightning. We'll go over a few things over their first game shortly. So maybe 2-week updates, and then as the season gets going, maybe we'll go week by week, depending on how the boys are doing. So again, just wanted to give a big welcome for our first episode. Might be a little on the shorter side. Just wanted to hit up some of the key topics that you see over to your left or right, depending which way it's mirroring. So of course wanted to go over some of the offseason acquisitions. The big story still pending, of course, is Brayden Point. When and if he will sign with the Lightning. Of course, he is a restricted free agent. Not sure if he's been offered any offer sheets. So basically he's holding out for the Lightning. No one's throwing an offer sheet out there forcing the Lightning to match. He's probably going to be demanding a pretty solid paycheck. And we'll go ahead and get into that. Then wanted to close briefly by Stevie Y, of course, moving on to the Detroit Red Wings officially this year. His first year as GM for the Red Wings, I think part of the plan all along. But wanted to compare him versus how Julien Brisebois has been doing, and if there's been any effect on that, maybe with the potential Brayden Point signing. So let's move right into offseason acquisitions. Pretty active offseason for the Lightning. Up top in red, you'll see our key subtractions, and down here in the green, of course, is our key additions. Some wheeling and dealing by Julien Brisebois. Getting rid of Miller, I think, was I liked our time with JT Miller here. I think he was productive during the season and even added a little bit of size and grit during the playoffs. Maybe not so much this year, but I think it's something we saw the year before. We'll miss him, but I think some of the moves he made to bring in like Pat Maroon, I think was a great move to give us a little bit of grit. Something we didn't see much of during the Columbus series last season. Losing Strawman, I think he moves down over to the Florida Panthers. I think for a little bit of an overpayment by the Panthers. Of course, they're always struggling at the salary cap floor to just even make enough for payroll. It looks like the ownership over there is really looking to compete, winning the Bobrovsky sweepstakes to be the successor to Roberto Luongo, who finally hung it up after 20 plus years. We'll miss you, Roberto, but they'll be retiring his number immediately later on this year down in Sunrise, Florida, for the Panthers. So Strawman going down to the Panthers. Miller, part of a pretty solid trade. I think should be good return for both sides. I think a couple prospect goalies heading over to the Lightning, along with a 2020 conditional first round pick. So I think that's really where Stevie Y made some headway and maybe taught JVB the ropes to stockpile those picks. You never know what kind of value you can get. Vancouver's in the middle of a rebuild, so you're looking at maybe a mid-tier first-round pick, depending on performance, of course. Maybe Vancouver has a not-so-great year. I'm expecting, especially with Elias Peterson coming off a great rookie year, that they're going to be middle of the pack over in the Pacific, potentially making the playoffs. It's always a kind of a dice throw over there. The Sharks are a lock. Kings, you never know what you're going to get out of Jonathan Quick and that team. So we'll just have to see what happens out west to see what that draft pick turns into kind of a weird pickup, and the Lightning goalie situation is very odd with Curtis McElhinney, and I think even Mike Condon coming over. Clearly, I think Mike Condon heading down to Syracuse in the AHL, probably to spend some time there. Big question mark is Louis Domingue. Solid performance last year. I think he reeled off 12 wins during Vasilevsky's absence early in the year with the broken foot. So I don't know what happens with Louis Domingue. He kind of made some cryptic tweets once we made the move during the free agent signing period in July of some issues in the locker room, or maybe things weren't as peachy as it seems, or it was perceived with such a record-breaking year for the Lightning. I don't know. I think the Lightning held on to him thinking it would have been a goaltender's market. Of course, Bobrovsky really being the big name that moved, and a few other well-established names moving on to different teams, like James Reimer, for instance. But really, I don't know if there are any takers on Domingue, despite his solid play last year and the year before as well, being a pretty formidable backup to Vasilevsky. So we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening. I think as we're looking to make room for Brayden Point, I think Domingue is going to have to be part of the cap opening that has to happen in the next couple weeks. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him on the move, and we end up with Curtis McElhinney, second time with the Lightning. If you remember, he was a Lightning team member maybe 7-8 years ago for a brief 30 minutes before he was retraded off again. So hopefully he'll stay this time. Pretty dependable backup. We anticipate Vasilevsky probably playing 65 games this year as he continues to work into his prime. So McElhinney shouldn't see action in any more than 20 games this year. We were able to re-sign, I believe, Danick Martel, Jean Bruda, who's a developing defenseman. I like the re-signing of Coburn. I think he has a little bit more left in the tank and upside than Girardi, which remains a free agent. His decline kind of began late last year and really struggled to break into some playing time, break into the starting roster or the starting lineup. Was quite often a healthy scratch for some of our run into our early exit into the postseason. Cedric Paquette was a big name on the is he expendable, is he not expendable kind of market. I'm glad we re-signed him. Again, we need a little bit more bite right where Patrick Maroon, I think, is really going to help with that as well. Luke Witkowski is back, a depth defenseman, if not splitting time in Syracuse, up and down. I like the move with Luke Shen, again, kind of a third grouping defenseman. And I like the move to get Kevin Shattenkirk. It was a long time coming. We had been in the Shattenkirk sweepstakes a few years ago, and it's great to finally land him, bring some veteran presence. I'm really happy with the moves that we were able to make, a few trades to acquire what the talent we needed at a pretty affordable price. We're still right up against the salary cap. I think with a few moves, we should be able to free up maybe $8 million for a potential run at Brayden Point. We'll have to see. And then just to round off our key losses, Callahan, degenerative disorder, I believe either the shoulder or his back, I'd have to specify. Ended up trading him as a cap move over to the Senators, and Ernie heading up to join Steve Yzerman, the guy who drafted him a few years back, as part of the Red Wings system. So all in all, I think some great moves. Puts us still in a position to make that run. Not sure if we'll be winning 61 games this year, but we should be near it and pretty competitive in a Southeast that actually is getting a little bit tighter with some of the moves being made, especially by the Panthers, surprisingly, and a few moves up in the Atlantic or the Metropolitan Division with the Rangers getting a little bit better as well. So let's talk about Brayden Point for a little bit. 2018-2019, record-breaking season for him. You'll see the stats below my face in front of you. I think really what we want to look at. Of course, you can't question what's been going on in his career. Over 40 goals last year, almost 100 points for the year. His effect on the power play is unquestionable. 20 power play goals and 35 power play points total. So very integral to our attack. But I really wanted to look at those playoff numbers, and especially with the deep run we made a year or so ago. It's 21 total playoff games, a minus 11. So 8 goals in those 21 games, so it's 15 points. So less than a point a game, which is okay. Stuff in the playoffs gets tighter, but I think what's concerning is that minus 11 rating, and I'd be curious to see what Kucherov's rating is to the last couple playoff runs, because he seems to find a way to disappear as well. We don't even want to talk about Columbus, how basically it took Bobrovsky standing on his head to fire up Columbus, and they had the momentum for the next 3 games. But so, yeah, we have the stats for the Columbus series last year too. 1 goal and a minus 5. Had a scrap for a penalty there, a scrap for a 5-minute penalty, and really only 7 shots over the whole 4-game series. Very ineffective. So that's kind of the problem with some of our high-paying guys. The guys we're paying so much to is they've kind of disappeared when it mattered in the playoffs. So once we get into tougher competition, the year before, kind of cruising through the first 2 rounds, but as soon as we got to Washington, especially towards the end of that series, the offense dried up, and here we are again talking about Columbus, where we double digits in total goals. I don't even know if we hit double digits against Bobrovsky in the 4-game series. It was just a brutal effort. So that kind of brings us to, where do we expect his payment to land, right? He's coming off his rookie deal. Might even be under an effective value of under $1 million a year. We're looking at William Nylander signing a $9 million contract. Leon Draisaitl up in Edmonton, kind of in the middle, $8.5 million. So the precedent is there. It's just, when you look back and you remember Stamkos, Gates, and Stammergeddon, and Victor Hedman, are we going to be able to sign him? I think it just depends on what point values. If he's going to be pushing for max money, you might see a situation where we're going to have a holdout because of the contract. No one's going to offer him the money. There's no room in anyone else's salary cap at this point in the game, so he literally will be holding out without being able to play with restricted free agent status. No other team's going to make a gamble and throw an offer sheet at him. They'd be sacrificing like their next 4 first-round picks for the next 4 years if the point were to sign on an offer sheet. So really, it's a waiting game. We need the offense. Our secondary scoring really has dropped off. I mean, what happened to Andre Palat this year, last season? He had a few injuries, but really that production's gone down. I think Killer's moving more into a kind of a power secondary scoring forward. We can expect double-digit numbers, but not too many from him. So I think Point is and you see these stats we talked about the power play. He is an integral member. It's just about how do we make the money work. I think next episode we'll look a little bit more in detail at the cap problems that the Lightning are going to be facing in the next few years, especially as some of these deals they negotiated start kicking in, such as new contracts for Nikita Kucherov, the new contract for Vasilevsky that he signed, his extension, I think, starts kicking in at a much bigger effect than he's had before. So Lightning are really going to have some tough choices to make in the near future. How to remain competitive and how to field a product that's going to be competitive when a good chunk of the salary is going to be given to 5 or 6 players. Less than a third of the roster is going to take up potentially 50 or 60% of the available salary cap space. So a couple issues coming up for them. Maybe we'll look at them next week's episode a little bit more closely. I kind of want wanted to close with posing a question and talking through it. So we had such a great time with Steve Yzerman as our GM. There are literal times where, was he doing Jedi mind tricks? How did he pull off some of these moves? How did he get rid of some of the dead weight that he kind of self-inflicted at the beginning? He had some very interesting moves when he first came on, but he also didn't really inherit a great situation from the previous GM. And how he was able to leverage and really know when players were at their highest selling point, get them sold off. Great example is Corey Conacher, selling him super high and overvalued, and able to turn him into Ben Bishop, who gave the Lightning stellar goaltending for the past for 5 years or so before Andrei Vasilevsky came to be. So again, just Steve Yzerman, a master at planning for the future and really being able to assess value and sell at the highest value. So, Julien Brisebois, the last, first full year last year, I think a few pretty good moves. I really liked what he did this offseason. But at the core of it, I kind of think to myself, would we still be in this situation with Brayden Point not being signed had Steve Yzerman still been the GM? Because I think Steve Yzerman had a lot to do with getting Stammer to his bridge deal and knowing that at the end of that 4 or 5 year contract that the big money was going to be there. Same thing with Kucherov. It was a big bridge deal before he got his 8-year contract extension. So Brayden Point's a young kid, 22, 23. I know he's thinking about his worth, and I know injury in sports. Sports is never a given, and especially with contracts not guaranteed in the NHL, you got to take what you can get and be careful. But you gotta. I think you have to consider, if you're Brayden Point, taking a bridge deal, take a team friendly deal, 2 or 3 years. Let's make some run for some cups. And honestly, but make a bridge deal until you get to unrestricted free agent status, and then hit the open market, kill it for the next 3 years, and then you could potentially be asking for the largest contract in NHL history if you continue to kill it. So, just kind of a take from my end. I think Stevie Y had the street cred of being a previous hockey player, of course, being able to connect with players that way, and I think Brisebois is doing a pretty good job for the situation he's been put in. Steve Yzerman kind of unexpectedly vacating that role and being a special advisor for a year, and then of course moving on now to the job we all knew he was eventually going to take with the Detroit Red Wings. So that's it for the Thunderdome Podcast for our first episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Give us a like on Facebook, subscribe, and always tweet at me at $10 Sports. Really excited for our next episode. Probably, like I said, we'll talk about salary cap issues, maybe talk about the preseason a little bit more. A little bit of a disappointing showing the last 2 games. Can't really read too much into preseason. A lot of split squad. And I even think Carolina had their full squad playing against a half squad of starters for the Lightning. So don't want to read into it too much. Going down 3-0 Tuesday and then 2-0 Wednesday. So no goals still scored the preseason for the Lightning. Don't want to read too much into it. We'll keep watching and make sure that we're all set to go for October for the drop of the puck over at Amalie Arena against the Panthers. Thanks so much. Make sure to comment. Make sure to like. Tweet at us at $10 Sports. Should have our next episode of $10 Sports with our picks up tomorrow. Mike should be joining me for that one as well. So we are excited for that. Bucks take on the Giants on Sunday. I imagine we'll have a Bucking hangover. Hopefully reacting to a Buccaneer win over the Giants and Jones and Saquon Barkley. Jones' first start over Eli Manning with the Giants. So we should have some good reaction to that. Maybe some fantasy sports news as well. So thanks so much. We will see you next time on the Thunderdome Puckcast. Take care.